Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Armenti, and on behalf of the community supporters for Beal Elementary School, I would like to welcome you to tonight's kickoff event. We are so pleased that all of you can make it this evening, and I'd like to take a moment to offer a special thank you to the Italian American Victory Club for hosting this very important event for our community. I'd like to first take a moment to recognize some key elected and appointed officials in the room. First off, we have State Representative Hannah Kane with us this evening. From the Shrewsbury Board of Selectmen, we have John Lebeaux, the chairman. Jim Kane is here. Mo DiPaolo. Moira Miller. And Beth Cassavant. From the school committee, we also have Jason Palich, Chairman and Chair of the Shrewsbury Democrat Town Committee. We have Sandra Frick here. Erin Canzano. We also have State Committee Woman, Chairman of the Shrewsbury Republican Town Committee, Mindy McKenzie, is here this evening. And from the Finance Committee, we have Jean Budenhagen. The present Beal School, located in the center of town, has had quite the lifetime. Built in 1922, Beal School was initially a junior-senior high school, becoming an elementary school in 1958. By 1987, Beal School housed all of the town's kindergarten students. Fast forward to 2018. Beal School is now an early childhood education center, housing 3 sections of overflow first graders from Floral Street School, 8 half-day kindergarten classes, and 6 tuition-based full-day kindergarten classes. At nearly 100 years old, the building of Beal School we know and love has reached the end of its usable life. At this time, we have a few members of the community who would like to come up and speak about today's cause. I would like to turn the mic over to fellow lifetime Shrewsbury resident, Commissioner at the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, Precinct 5 Town Meeting member, and 20-year member and present Chair of the Shrewsbury Board of Selectmen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Lebeaux to the stage.
Gee whiz, yeah. Thank you very much for the introduction, Matt. Good evening, everybody. You covered a lot of it. I was going to recognize my fellow selectmen, but we can take that. That's done. I've been asked to speak for a few minutes to talk about what's happened in the past to bring us all together tonight and what the necessary next steps are to make a new Beal School a reality. The Board of Selectmen and the School Committee agreed in the recent past that after almost a century of service, as Matt said, first as our second high school, where my dad happened to graduate in 1942, then as an elementary school, and now as our early childhood center, the Beal School facility in its current form is at the end of its useful life. The board sought and received town meeting approval to establish the Beal School Building Committee, which was tasked with the very, very detailed work to apply to the Mass School Building Authority to consider sharing costs with the town to construct a new or renovated school. And Selectman Jim Kane serves as chair of the Beal Committee. So a lot of work has been done to get us to this point. Evaluations demonstrated that a new building was a more cost-effective approach than a renovation or a renovation addition. What's necessary now are for 2 different votes to take place to authorize the funding of the project. The board has called for a special town meeting on October 22nd, at which time the town meeting will be asked to approve the borrowing of funds for the project. That's not unusual. Anytime the town wishes to borrow, our local legislative body, the town meeting, must give its approval, and it must give that approval by a 2/3 vote. As we have a representative town meeting in Shrewsbury, this vote will be taken by our elected town meeting representatives, of which there are 240, and they are proportioned out based on the populations of our 10 precincts. A majority of 50% plus 1, or 121 town meeting representatives, constitutes a quorum. But secondly, and directly related to why most of us are here tonight, is that on November 6th, concurrent to the general state election, there will be a vote by the town's voters, the electorate, to approve a debt exclusion, allowing the town to exceed the Proposition 2.5 annual tax increase limitations that were voted by the state's voters in 1980. A simple majority of 50% plus one of registered voters who vote on the question will determine the outcome. Now, though I just mentioned Proposition 2.5, what the voters are being asked to consider is not a Proposition 2.5 override, though many misinformed individuals will tell you that it is. It's a debt exclusion. The key difference, and it's a very important distinction, is that a debt exclusion is temporary and a Prop 2.5 override is perpetual. A debt exclusion can be best compared to a mortgage. A favorable vote allows the town to tax the necessary funds to pay the principal and interest on the borrowing. Depending on the individual project, a debt exclusion can exist for a variety of years and be of various lengths, just similar to, say, 15 and 30-year mortgages. But once the debt exclusion is paid off, that additional taxation ends. Debt exclusion is the means by which we and most other Massachusetts communities fund large construction projects. That's how Shrewsbury paid for or are continuing to pay for Floral Street School, the new high school, 20-year-old new high school, Sherwood, the new fire stations, the library, and the senior center in, say, the last 20-odd years. Now, those were many very successful projects from both a programming and financial perspectives. But that's not an indication that this process is going to be easy, because it isn't. And I think we've all seen how trends can change in a single election. It was very different in Shrewsbury in the not-too-distant past. In the late 80s and early 90s, there was a very divisive split in town that began then between a group of very active supporters of expanding school facilities and opponents to that effort. That split grew bigger and bigger, and with it, so did mistrust grow larger and larger. Nothing could get accomplished for almost 5 years. The town spent 1986 to 1990 studying the problem and coming up with a variety of solutions. Most of those solutions were brought forward to town meeting between 1990 and 1993, with many of them being defeated at town meeting with over 70% opposed. A few did make it to go to the voters, and they all lost, with between 58 and 66% of voters opposed. Now, the logjam broke with the approval of the Floral Street School, which opened in 1997. But I remind you, everything is cyclical. And without an organized campaign and people willing to work and walk the walk, this vote will not be successful. Talking the talk is just not enough. According to the town clerk, we have 23,814 registered voters in town. Now, this election is going to have a much higher than average turnout from our normal municipal elections, as it is coupled with the state election. The last turnout for a state midterm election in Shrewsbury was 79% in 2012. By comparison, the highest turnout we've ever had in a strictly municipal election was 53% in 2007. But most of our municipal elections have far lower turnouts than that. So what are we up against? It seems to me that right now, the vast majority of our voters really know nothing about the Beal project and the Beal vote. And human nature is to resist taking on additional personal expense unless there is a compelling narrative that explains why it's in one's interest to do so. If a voter hasn't been educated to why a yes vote is in their interest, she or he will most likely just vote no. And please do not forget that there are 2,500 to 3,000 voters who we can count on to be opposed to any and all tax increases. This group will vote come hell or high water. They don't need to be educated or informed. They vote every single election. But please, let's not look unkindly at these folks. We all have different circumstances, and we all have different outlooks. So I mentioned earlier that we've been on a pretty good roll since the Floral Street project was approved in the 90s. But there have been some hiccups. But what doesn't change is that costs generally only go one way, up. In November 2005, a fire facilities debt exclusion vote lost by exactly 30 votes. A revised proposal passed a year later, but the anticipated project cost to that revised proposal was $750,000 more. In November 2011, a library debt exclusion vote lost by 153 votes. The revised proposal that did pass in 2013 had an estimated project cost of $4.8 million more. So like other debt exclusion campaigns, it begins as an uphill battle, but it's a battle that easily can, I shouldn't say easily, it's a battle that with work can be won. That doesn't happen by everyone nodding and smiling and going home tonight thinking you've done your part. The real work begins today. The job is to organize an effective campaign to explain, to educate, and most of all, to get the vote out on November 6th. There will be no positive outcome without the people in this room getting active. We have those who have participated in past campaigns to thank for projects that benefit the community now and for decades in the future. So now is the time for this group to bring about another well-conceived project to continue that tradition, for residents to derive its benefit in both the near and the distant future. And with that effort, we will have a successful campaign leading to a positive vote on November 6th and a new Beal School to open in 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker is the president of the Parker Road Parent-Teacher Organization, co-president of the Beal PTO, Beal School Council member, fellow Precinct 10 Town Meeting member, and mother of 3 young boys. Please join me in welcoming Michelle Conlin to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. I am Michelle Conlin, and as Matt mentioned, I am mom to 3 little boys, and I do a lot of volunteer work in our community and especially in our schools. And because of that volunteer work, I spend a lot of time in our schools. I love Beal, and I feel so fortunate that I get to send my kids to such an incredible school with truly wonderful teachers and staff and administration. I was absolutely blown away by the growth I saw in my son when he finished his kindergarten year. Emotionally, socially, academically, it really is almost everything that we could ask for in a school. But I say almost because these amazing educators that we have fight every single day to make the best of a really difficult environment. The first time I ever stepped foot into Beal was just a few years ago, and I was shocked at the condition and the age of the school. In the course of learning more about the building and the school, I learned that it had been reopened as a temporary space for early childhood education in the early 1980s with a plan to use the space for just 3 years. 30-something years later, we still have 300 of our youngest students going to school there. The building feels like a Band-Aid because it is a Band-Aid. Every single person who works in early childhood education agrees that little kids need to move. They need space in their classrooms to work and to move their bodies, and the size of the classrooms at Beal are far below the modern standards in early childhood education today. Our school library, which is already totally undersized, lost several hundred books this past November when it flooded during a nor'easter due to the condition and age of the windows. This is not the first time it's happened, and it's not going to be the last. Beal is located near one of the busiest intersections in town, and it serves families from every corner of Shrewsbury, making for a challenging commute during the busiest times of the day. The condition and layout of the parking lot are difficult to maneuver, especially with a stroller, which I'm very familiar with. So I can't even imagine the challenge that it poses to people with mobility issues. Our cafeteria, which is located in the basement of the school, is undersized, and it doesn't fit all of the students it needs to serve across the 3 lunch periods. So they have to set up and break down tables in the windowless art/music room every single day. Many specialists in the school have offices in the basement, again, which was in rooms that were originally designed for utility space or storage. It also includes 2 full-day kindergarten classrooms in the basement, and all of which need to constantly run dehumidifiers to prevent mold. There are not enough bathrooms in the building, and they're not appropriately sized for children, and they're not set up for kids or adults with disabilities. The only accessible bathroom for kids with special needs on the first floor is located in the nurse's office, which is also the bathroom that all of the sick children use when they're waiting for their parents to pick them up. Most alarmingly, there is no fire suppression system in the building. There's asbestos and rodent issues. There's no ventilation system, so the air doesn't move through the building. The boiler is so loud that it shakes the building and overheats the nearby classrooms to the point where they have to open their windows in the dead of winter while classrooms on the other end of the building are cold. When classes move through the building or have movement breaks in their rooms, it sounds like a herd of elephants overhead. You have dust and particles falling from the floor, from the ceilings and the walls. The building's stuffy, and the 100-year-old windows are hard to open, and anyone who's ever sat through the community sing-along in the gym can attest to how oppressively hot and uncomfortable it can get in there. There's no amount of remodeling that can be done at Beal that will solve the school capacity issues that we face town-wide. Many of the neighborhood schools have trailers serving as classrooms, and there's not enough space to offer full-day kindergarten for all, which is becoming the educational standard of today. And half-day kindergarten, you're given 2.5 hours of in-class instruction time to prepare kids in reading, science, and math for first grade. And for kids that have learning disabilities or are learning English, this can be incredibly challenging. And it shouldn't come down to how much money your family has to afford to pay for full-day kindergarten to get that extra instruction time and specials such as art, gym, and music. Half-day kids have art once every 4 weeks, and full-day students get it every week. From the perspective of the parent-teacher organization, there are many challenges that we face in building community in our school when families are in and out in a year. There's barely enough time to understand the people, the policies, and how the school works before you're transitioned out to another school and you have a brand new crop of parents coming in. The limitations at Beal mean that students there miss out on community and connections that you build when you're attending your neighborhood schools. In our neighborhood schools, there are programs where kids get matched up with older kids in buddy programs to read to, work on projects together, and have as role models to help form deeper bonds in their school. They see their siblings in the hallway, they get to ride on the same bus and get home at the same time. They get to keep in touch with their kindergarten teachers. Even simple things like seeing your old teacher in the hallway and sharing a project that you had worked on and checking in with each other and being able to follow their progress, it means so much. But at Beal, these kids work all year to form these bonds with their teachers, and then they never see them again. The new school will provide equity across all the schools for students in our town. Special education services that currently take place in makeshift offices and utility closets, cubbies in loud rooms, or hallways will now have appropriate space to do this incredibly important one-on-one work with kids who need quiet space to do the work that they need to do to catch up to their peers and to meet their full potential. When a child is being pulled out of classroom instruction for the specialized work that is so important to their progress, that time needs to be valuable and productive. Opening a new school will relieve these pressures across the entire school district and serve so many children in such a valuable way. Beal opened its doors in 1922 for high school students. That's almost 100 years ago. My kids' great-great-grandparents were in middle school and wouldn't graduate high school for almost another 10 years. You can't possibly use that building to meet the standards, the modern-day needs of children who are in kindergarten and first grade. And even if Shrewsbury poured the millions of dollars necessary into renovating Beal to bring it up to date, it still wouldn't solve the overcrowding and space issues that we're facing as a town. This is an investment that we need to benefit all of us today and will serve generations of Shrewsbury students for years to come. Shrewsbury needs this new school, and Shrewsbury deserves this new school. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Our final speaker this evening is a BI solution developer at TJX, Shrewsbury Town Meeting member from Precinct 1, and the campaign manager for the Community Supporters for Beal School. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jason Molina to the stand.
Well, welcome and thank you all for spending your time to hear about this most important upcoming election affecting our community. Now, I'm sure of you are thinking, I've seen this guy before. Well, you've seen me on Shrewsbury Cable talking about recycling. You see me probably at the bottle and can drives that I run in front of Beal. You've seen me probably stand up and questioning or pushing some kind of motive at town meeting. Maybe you might be for it or against what I would bring up on town meeting, but in either case, all those things come together because just like this project, someone needs to stand up. Someone needs to get involved. Someone needs to say, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to step up. This is way too important to let it go by. It is something that I need to get involved in because it is affecting all of us. And that's why I decided to join as campaign manager for this great campaign. Since early summer, our campaign has had volunteers motivated to step up and get involved for several reasons. For the volunteers who've had kids in middle schools or the high school, they're motivated knowing that someone else paid for those schools. And so they've stepped up knowing that this is a way to give back to the community. This is a way to pay it forward. Then there's other volunteers that are financially motivated, and they see this project in dollars and cents. They see this as progress that town officials, the MSBA, the project manager, and architects have put together a fiscally responsible and well thought out plan for this project. They know that the state is funding a significant portion and would not want to see this opportunity be lost. And finally, there are volunteers who have stepped up because they have kids who haven't gone into the schools yet. Right? But they see and they understand and they've heard the overcrowding in elementary schools. And they want to get involved now. They know that they put the effort into it now, it's going to benefit them, it's going to benefit the community, and so they've stepped up. They've stepped in to get involved. So that's their motivation. And perhaps it's their, in their stories, you see your own story. But why are you here tonight? Well, whatever their story, being here tonight is the first step in recognizing that our community needs our help. All the people in this room tonight know that we have a ballot question coming. That's why we're here. Surprisingly, though, we are finding that many people in our community either still do not know, as John had alluded earlier, about the project, or that they think that Beal's already done deal. Why are we even talking about it? I see it in the paper, it's flashed. You got the land, right? Beal needs to go, we need a new one. Sadly, we still need to reach them, because if we don't reach them, they're not gonna know. The election's gonna come by, they're gonna get into that poll, and they're gonna say, what's this? And John mentioned it earlier. The first reaction is, no, I don't know anything about this. What is this? This is why we need to step up. Okay. Despite the many selectmen, school committee, Beal building committee meetings, despite the news articles, despite the countless social media posts, not enough people know that we still need to vote yes on November 6th to authorize this project. Folks, we all know about this project because we, in different ways, we're tuned in. But out there's a huge electorate who are heading to the polls. They're not going to know this is on there. And their motivation to vote is on a number of candidates on the state ballot. What they don't know is that there's going to be a second ballot, right? And that they need to ask for. The local ballot, that has our ballot question on Beal. They need to take it. They need to ask for it. The best way to address this knowledge gap is to talk to as many voters on a one-to-one basis as possible. We can win, but only if we reach these voters. We need you to volunteer to talk with them one-on-one. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. How can I inform them about this complicated project? Well, folks, quite frankly, when you head to the polls and you're looking at that local ballot, your choices are simple. yes or no on whether to authorize this project. It's not a restaurant menu. We're not selecting from individual elements of this project, right? What land, how big, how many rooms. Those individual elements, they're already thought about and figured out in the long process. And many of you in this room have been involved in that process. Good people, smart people, they know what they're doing. Now it's time for us to do our part in informing the rest of the lecture that it's just one simple question, yes or no. And of course, what do you want them to say? Yes. You want them to vote yes. There are other activities you can engage in from a volunteer perspective. Nothing is as helpful to the campaign as knocking on doors. Again, the theme here, right? One-to-one conversations. When we talk to voters about this project, a message is easy to convey and understand. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number 1, the current Beal School is 100 years old, and it's the end of its useful life as an elementary school. Number 2, the project is the best investment for the taxpayers of Shrewsbury. Number 3, and the most important, vote yes on November 6th. People understand it. They get it. I've personally been out there. I've been on those doors. I've seen the reaction. I've told them, 1, 2, 3. And they tell me, well, what's there to argue about? Why would somebody, they ask me, why would somebody say no to this? And I said, I don't know. I don't know why they say no. It doesn't make any sense to me. But in reality, there will be folks out there, and John brought it up. There's going to be folks out there that are going to say no regardless. But it is our role to make sure that we bring enough people to the polls with the mindset that yes is the answer, and we can do it. We can win. But it takes us, all of us, to get out there, form those people, because when they walk into that poll, they need to know. So unfortunately, our remaining time is short. On Tuesday, this Tuesday, we will be 6 weeks out from the election. When you factor in that we have early voting this year, that leaves us 4 weeks, okay, to inform as many voters as possible, right, before they start casting their votes. That's not a lot of time left, which is why it's critical that you decide today, not tomorrow, but today to fill out a volunteer sheet and mark off that you want to door knock. I get it. We all have busy lives. You have a lot of commitments on your plate already between kids' sports, dance lessons, music lessons, scouting, etc. I know. I'm a parent of 3 boys myself. It's hard. But when you find ways to make it work, we all find ways to fit in that one more thing into the calendar. We find ways to get in that time at the gym while grandma is taking care of the kids. We find that time when the neighbor offers to watch your kids, have that play date. We find ways to make it work in either way. Folks, we can make it work. Find that time. Make Beal a priority. Find it in your schedule, because the stakes are too high. Just letting this go by is going to make sure that we lose. We need to get involved. If we lose this election, it's not because of the opposition. It will not be because of some controversy. It will be because we failed to step up, failed to get involved. Folks, we need to find a way, because together we're going to make this successful. We've learned in recent years what happens if we just sit back and expect an election will just go our way. Just wish it, we just will it. The only way to ensure a win for Beal is to have as many face-to-face conversations on the doors as possible, so my fellow Shrewsbury neighbors and friends, make Beal a priority in your busy lives, and we will win. It's just that simple. Thank you. Good night.
And that concludes the speaking portion for this evening, and I just want to reiterate what everybody said, November 6th, get out and vote, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and do what you can. Thank you.